My name is Jim Canfield from Champion Solutions Group. I, along with Chris Sullivan and Craig Eidelman of Microsoft, are your hosts today. And the purpose of today's presentation is to review the capabilities of solutions that are being provided through and taking advantage of Azure, and specifically Enterprise Mobility Suite. And to that end, we've tailored this presentation to mainly a healthcare environment, but the solution we're talking about is applicable to all businesses of all types, such that the security rules, etc., that we will talk about are applicable in the different environments. So with that, we're going to get kicked off. Again, I'm Jim Canfield from Champion, and wouldn't be a presentation if it didn't give me grief trying to get the first slide to go. So a brief commercial on Champion. See, that was very brief. That's me being impatient on the keyboard, so laugh at me, it's okay. Champion is an organization. We've been around since about 1979. We're headquartered in South Florida, Boca Raton to be specific. We have offices from Boca to Boston and out about as far west as Chicago, but we work with clients all around the world as it relates to cloud solutions, etc. Over the last 6 or so years, we have been one of Microsoft's leading cloud partners as it relates to Office 365. More recently, Azure. We've done quite a bit with Dynamics CRM, etc. We're a gold partner and have multiple different competencies, as well as working with other companies. So we're going to just jump into it. We look at organizations, and all organizations are changing very quickly. As IT professionals, we're being challenged to make sure that our data is secure, allow our users to access data from wherever on whatever they want, and to be able to prove that all of the data, all of the stuff that they're doing is maintaining and protecting the organization's integrity. So we've all heard the wonderful news stories about security breaches, etc. So to that end, we're focused on helping organizations better understand how to take advantage of it, how to put a plan together to utilize existing or investments, as well as look at the investments that can help get your business put together. So some interesting facts: 50%, or this is based on data discovered, 50% of all companies are expected to be requiring BYOD by the end of next year. I find that rather dramatic. 90%, okay, are expected to support the 2 major mobile operating systems. Windows 10 Mobile, probably not going to be one of them. You guys can read, so I'm not really going to read the slides to you, but some interesting things is that our users, us, we all make mistakes on a regular basis. Most of the time they're done innocently, but at the end of the day, our security solutions need to be able to identify when a user makes a mistake, whether on purpose or with malice. So the percentages of users and how things are being done in the organization, and those hidden silos within your company where people just go out and purchase whatever the heck they want to use and start sharing stuff, can get your executives in trouble. So our goal is to help you get a handle on that, identify that, and develop a strategy to maintain compliance. Becoming compliant is a challenge, but that's not the big challenge. The big challenge is maintaining compliance while still allowing your users that are here, there, and everywhere to be able to do their job without too much jumping through hoops. So to that end, as an organization, as an IT, we have all of these lovely things that we have to address: business partners, data, devices, etc., where data is coming from, business partners, etc. And it's a daunting task. Don't get it wrong. So we try to look at it and define the areas that we need to secure. So when we look at the devices, apps, etc., okay, we want to be able to, if our organization wants it, follow the mantra. Anything, anywhere, at any time, on any device. It doesn't matter, okay, as long as we maintain data integrity. So that's the strategy, and that's about as open-ended a strategy as can exist, and that's what all the organizations, whether healthcare or other, that's what they want. So to that end, utilizing the Enterprise Mobility Suite, which we'll talk about, we're going to go into pretty deep dive into it in a whiteboard presentation here in a minute. We're looking to meet these challenges while not ending up having users come after us with pitchforks. So to that end, I am going to introduce Craig Eidelman of Microsoft. Craig is a solution specialist. He happens to be on the healthcare team at Microsoft, and he is going to walk us through a whiteboard presentation of Enterprise Mobility Suite. During the presentation, please feel free to ask any questions you would like through instant messaging. I will be monitoring, and I will answer those that I can. And at the end of the presentation, if there's additional questions, we can always take that offline or whatever. At the end, we will open it up for additional questions. We do have a giveaway at the end for your time, and we also will be talking about how your organization can look at these new technologies, whether it's Azure, whether it's the Enterprise Mobility Suite, and leverage your current relationships with Microsoft, or leverage some offerings that are being made available, and they're called Azure or EMS Everywhere, and we'll talk about those near the end. But at the end of the day, it's a way to get your feet wet without having to go through a whole boatload of approvals. We have the ability to get Microsoft to fund part or all of it, and we can identify specific areas we can go at. So with that being said, I am turning over control to Craig now, and Craig, it's all you, sir.
All right, great, thank you. So what I'm going to talk about today is how the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite can really tackle 3 to 4 main key areas in your environment, and how we can ensure from a security perspective that we focus on these 4 pillars. So the pillar number 1 is going to be identity. So it starts out here with your HR system, but how do you determine the identity of those end users, those partners that you might be, those business partners you might be working with? Maybe they're physicians. In the case of a lot of the hospitals that I work with, you've got physicians that are on staff, and you've got physicians that are affiliated with that facility. They might not actually get a paycheck, but they still need admitting privileges. They still need access to the data in the electronic health record systems, whatever that might be. So we want to make sure that those folks get properly added to those systems, and we can manage their identity. Once we have a good understanding of their identity, we want to focus on the devices that they're using. We verified who these people are. We want to ensure that the devices that those people are using meet our requirements. And not just the devices that they're using, but the applications on those devices. So those devices could be a Windows machine that's joined to your domain, or maybe it's a personal device that they've got sitting at home. It could be an iPhone or an iPad running iOS. It could be an Android device, a phone or a tablet as well. But either way, we want to make sure that those users on those devices can have a good experience and be able to get access to cloud applications, whether that's Office 365 or other applications that exist in the cloud today. And finally, once we've verified the user, we know the devices that they're logging onto is clean, we want to next look at the applications. How do we secure the applications themselves that are running on those devices? And more importantly, the data that those applications are using. So if I'm typing information in a Word document, we need to know whether that document contains potentially patient or any sort of sensitive information, or it's just a holiday card we're going to be sending out to the our entire department. So we're going to start by focusing on identity, and the start of identity, of any good identity conversation, is really looking at that source of truth. Where are those employee sources of truth coming from? And in most cases, it's going to be some sort of HR system. I've talked to some customers as well as our payroll system, but in generally speaking, it's something related to HR. And if you are a hospital facility and you have external physicians, maybe it's a physician credentialing system that determines those identities. But either way, once we get those identities, I am unable to move the slides forward here. See if you can reshare it to me. Don't mind.
You should be good now, so I'm sorry.
Okay. It's still not letting me. Okay, there we go. Was that you clicking or was that me?
Yeah, I clicked that time. It shows you have control. Please try one more time. I see you moving the mouse. Okay.
There we go. Okay. I think we're good. All right, great. So what we're going to first do is provision those users from HR into our Active Directory. And the solution that we have at Microsoft that can do this is Microsoft Identity Manager. Microsoft Identity Manager can do those user provisionings, but it can also add a unique security capability, is privileged access management. So when you're trying to secure those administrative identities, so administrator accounts, privileged accounts that exist in your systems, in many cases today, the best practice is to have two accounts. One for your, as an IT administrator, your personal account, so things that you use to check email and just do your day-to-day work, and then a different account for your to do administrative work, so to log onto servers, to log into applications, to do the admin type work. But what we don't want to do is make sure that have those accounts have administrative access 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, because if you are somehow breached and an adversary is inside your network, they're going to start targeting those accounts. And if those accounts have security rights 24 hours a day to administrative rights, and they happen to capture the credentials for those accounts, they're going to move laterally from systems until they can really start infecting those key critical business systems like Active Directory servers, Exchange servers, and so on. So privileged identity management, or privileged access management, how this works is basically it's a time-based access to admin rights. So as an administrator, if I come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to check my email, do my normal work, and then probably about 9:30 or so, I'm going to decide to go in and do some server work. Before I do that, all I do is go into Microsoft Identity Manager, check out those admin rights to my accounts. I'm going to verify that I do need these rights. I can be then authenticated through a second factor to really verify it's me requesting that account. And then once I get access to that account, I can have it for 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, however long you might want to decide in that via policy. And then after that time, those admin rights disappear. So it's going to really reduce the risk of those administrative accounts being compromised by an adversary who happens to breach your network. And we can do the same thing in Azure as well, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. The other thing MIM can provide is self-service password reset from those domain-joined Windows clients. So if someone forgets their password, instead of having to call the help desk, I can hit Control-Alt-Delete and then be asked a series of challenge and response questions, and then my password is reset. So we're looking at ways of reducing the burden on the help desk when it comes to identity management of your users. The other thing that MIM can do is user sync. So syncing your user accounts between Active Directory, your HR system, and all these other applications. So we've got a great example of a customer today doing this in healthcare. We've got Grady Health out of Atlanta. They are using Microsoft Identity Manager to synchronize their users between their HR system, which in their case is PeopleSoft, Active Directory, and their EHR system, which in their case is Epic, to provide a single solution to manage those identities across those applications. So this tool can not only extend to AD and into the cloud, but also into your on-premise applications and really help you ensure that you can track those users across across those different applications. So once we've got those users synced to AD, let's look at how we get the access to cloud applications. So we've got all these different applications sitting up in the cloud: Office 365, Workday, Salesforce, maybe you've got Concur for travel, Lawson Infor, all these different cloud applications that exist. Today, a lot of folks, what they're doing is using various connection points to get there, so that user, normally when they log in, they have a separate username and password. So I'm going to log into Concur, I'm going to log into Salesforce, I've got my own unique ID that maybe IT gave me. Or you're using Federation, so that could be ADFS, it could be Ping, it could be a couple different solutions that are out there today. But either way, there's something that as you as IT are going to have to do to set up, manage, and maintain this type of federation. But now with Azure Active Directory, what I can do is take my Active Directory on-premise, using the Azure AD Connect tool, connect that my on-premise AD to Azure AD and synchronize into Azure Active Directory Premium, and then I can get access to all these other SaaS applications. So for example, Office 365 is an easy one because all the identities on Office 365 run on Azure AD. So very easy to get access to that application if you sign up for for Office 365. And then you can use that same directory to get access to all of the other cloud applications. So we can federate with over right now 2,700 different cloud applications that are in our application gallery. If for some reason you can't connect to those applications and provide single sign-on, you can also manage the federation yourself through Azure AD Premium, as well as let us know. So if you see that there's a cloud application that we don't have in our gallery that you use and it's business critical, there's an email address you can send a request to, and our team will work with you and that appropriate cloud vendor to get the application pulled into our application gallery. We're there to help you make sure that all your cloud apps are available in Azure AD as possible. So now we provided single sign-on to those cloud applications using that same identity that we have back on premise. So that user, when they want to log into Salesforce now, they can go to either the Azure AD App Portal, or depending on how you configure Salesforce, they can be redirected to that portal to sign on with their corporate credentials, so their domain, username, and password. But because we know who they are and we're synchronizing them to the cloud, we can also enable cloud self-service password reset. So you've got users who maybe are not at a PC in a domain joined PC in your environment every day. They're walking around, they're mobile, they might not be in the office, and maybe it's an external physician who only comes into the facility every once in a while. If they forget their password, instead of having to call the help desk, they can do self-service password reset from the cloud. And via challenge and response questions or a secondary phone number or email address that you'd verify, that you can choose to be verified, they can be verified and then reset that password, and that password go right back on premise. So all I have to do as an end user, I go to a website, or if I'm logging into Office 365, I forgot my password, I can click on the forgot password link, and I can go through that self-service password reset process. So again, another way of reducing that cost around the help desk, but this is independent of the location of the user. They could be anywhere that has access to a web browser and be able to reset their password. And then we have other tools that are part of this entire process. So we've got Azure multi-factor authentication. So Azure MFA can provide the phone as a second factor of authentication for those users. So if I'm signing into Office 365, I can then be prompted on my phone via a push notification of an application, a 6-digit rolling code, a phone call to that mobile phone or office phone, or a text message to that device as well to verify that I am that person before I gain access to that system. So this can be done for cloud applications as well as for on-premise applications too. We have integrations points into if you're using Cisco VPN or Juniper VPN or Citrix Access Gateway, all these different appliances we can connect that MFA application to, so that when the user wants to connect to those applications, they can also be prompted for a multi-factor authentication challenge. This is also a great way from a security standpoint to reduce the risk around stolen credentials, because if someone does happen to have those credentials and tries to log into the system, they do not have access to that physical device, and it would be hard for them to bypass that to get into those systems. So another great way of reducing risk around compromised credentials is by using a multi-factor authentication system. Again, we have this built directly into the system. We have rich reporting, so you can see what the users are doing. We have the ability to look at using Azure AD Connect Health, look at the connection health. Are all your users synchronizing properly? Are there issues with some of these users? Have they not synced? Is there Active Directory errors that are happening on premise that is causing errors into the cloud? So Connect Health can help you look at that. We've added some new features around conditional access. So this is really important as users are moving around from environment to environment. We want to provide, IT wants to make sure there's various conditions that they satisfy before they gain access to our systems. So let me give you an example here. With a user condition, does this user have access to the system? Well, yes, they do, so we're going to let them in. Is the device they're logging in from an authorized device? Is it managed by our environment? If it's not managed, does the device at least, is it clean? Is it a jailbroken iPad, for example, or a rooted Android device? If it doesn't qualify, if it doesn't meet those requirements, and you know what, because your iOS device is jailbroken, we really can't verify the security of that device is good, so we're not going to let you into our system. is that PC you're coming from, is it a domain joined machine versus a non-domain joined machine? So looking at all these different conditions on the device side, we can then provide access. We can also look at the application conditions. Maybe if someone's connecting outside your environment, so maybe from home into Salesforce, into something that's considered really confidential, and want to really verify who they are, you can then look at that as well and say, you know what, since you're coming in from to this specific application, we're just going to have an MFA challenge just for this application. So maybe not for the whole system, but just to log into Salesforce, for example. You can look at locations of that condition. Are they logging in from the US, and all of a sudden are they logging in from, let's say, Asia or from Europe? So we can look at those conditions and determine should they have access or should they not have access. So we can allow, we can present them with a multi-factor authentication challenge, or we can deny access. Another component of this too is looking at the risk of those logins. So the Azure Identity Protection, we look at risk-based access control. So based on the risk of those logons, you can then determine what conditions we should take. So let me give you an example. This person is trying to log in from, let's say, China into our applications, but 5 minutes earlier they logged in from the US. So that's a risky login. Based on that risk, we want to do something. Let's say, well, since it's a little higher risk, we're going to challenge them with multi-factor authentication, just to verify who they are, to ensure that they really are who they say they are, that username and password isn't compromised, and we're going to get them in. The other thing this type of risk-based conditional access control is, it looks at the power of Microsoft behind you. So we have lists of all these stolen credentials that are leaked on the web. So if we see, hey, it looks like that username and password combination is part of a combination that's been leaked out on the web, that also is a significant risk. So based on that risk, what do you want to do? Well, we can let the user in, or since we have self-service password reset from the cloud, we can force a self-service password reset challenge to those users. So we combine conditional access on the left-hand side with risk-based access control on the right-hand side to help our users and IT have confidence that these people really are who they say they are. We're going to verify who they are before they say they are before they get into our system, and ensure that all these different conditions that they meet on the user, the device, and the applications are going to meet our needs. So this is the power of what Azure Active Directory Premium can do for your system. But then people say, well, we've got all these on-premise applications. You're not going to be everything up in the cloud. Well, that's also an easy access point too, because now with a solution part of this called Azure AD App Proxy, I could take our on-premise applications and proxy them out into the cloud. So now when our users log into this portal, they can not only get all of our cloud applications, but they can get our on-premise applications as well. So when you look at the solution as a whole, on this identity management side, we're able to ensure that we can provision the users, deprovision the users, verify who they say they are via multi-factor authentication or other challenges, give them the ability to have self-service password reset, and also provide conditions of access that determine, based on these conditions, should they get access to our environment, and we provide federation to cloud-based applications beyond Office 365. So what we've got here is a really good solution to look at how do we tackle the challenge around managing these identities. So we've gotten this down. We've figured out, okay, we've got these people, we know who they are. Now let's look a little bit closer on their devices. So when it comes to device management, we have Microsoft Intune. So this is our cloud-based mobile device and actually PC and Mac device management as well. So we can do this from a couple perspectives. We can look at MDM, or mobile device management. So we want to ensure that the devices are registered and managed into our environment. Maybe it's an iPad, so we've got a little drawing of an iPad. I can fully manage this device using Microsoft Intune MDM. As for an end user, all they have to do is download the company portal application from the iOS or Android store. When that application is downloaded to those devices, they sign in with their corporate credentials, and then that device becomes managed. So after they register the device, and we can push down certificates to that device, we can configure VPN settings and VPN pros on the device, Wi-Fi profiles, all these profiles that we can do to manage that actual device itself. But what if it is not a device that people want to manage? So there's a lot of end users who are uncomfortable with the corporation managing their personal phone. So how do we get around that, but still make sure, we still want them to be productive, We still want them to be able to access email. We still want them to be able to access their files that are potentially stored on OneDrive for Business and other cloud applications. So what can we do to ensure that they're going to have that good experience? Well, we've introduced mobile application management into Microsoft Intune and more importantly into the Office applications. So inside the applications, they are multi-identity applications. So I'll give you an example of the Outlook app. Outlook can connect to Exchange, but it can also connect to people's Outlook.com personal account or Gmail or Hotmail or whatever else they might be using. And inside the application, we segregate the corporate data from the personal data. And once we do that, we can manage that application and manage the corporate data separate from what we would manage the personal data. So let's say it's an email attachment. I can prevent them from copying that or saving that email attachment from our corporate environment to the personal environment. So sorry, you can't save that confidential Word document to your personal iCloud account. We can allow you to paste it into a enterprise managed environment. So we want you to save it to our OneDrive for Business. But maybe you can, and the same thing goes for copy paste. If I'm going to take some text that's sitting in an enterprise email, I can copy it into my personal email, copy paste into that personal email. But it's important, though, we want them to access our corporate location so they can copy and paste that data into an Excel file, a Word document, or another personal or another corporate email, and maybe save it to OneDrive for Business or send it on or whatever that user needs to do. So what we're doing is ensuring that the corporate data stays managed within those corporate managed applications. We can also add an additional security on top of these applications, like a PIN. So since you're not managing the device, you're not really enforcing if there's a PIN overall on the entire device. But we can say, you know what, because this Outlook app is accessing corporate data, we're going to apply an additional PIN to this application. If you're using iOS, it can also use Touch ID to verify that user. The same goes for Android if the phones support the biometrics. But what we're able to do now is control the data sitting inside those applications and control the applications separately from the device itself. And this gives you access to two different scenarios. You could have corporate-owned and corporate-managed devices using MDM, and people's personal devices can use mobile application management, or MAM. You can give your users a choice of what they want to do. You can say, you know what, if you want to get access to email, I'm sorry, you have to have that device be managed, but maybe you just want access to OneDrive for Business. You don't have to manage the whole device. I'm giving you examples here. It's nothing that's set in stone, just different choices that you might have when it comes to managing those users and those users' data. And because all the Office applications support this, that's generally the first thing people do when they get a new device. They connect to their email. If I get a new phone, the first thing I'm going to do is connect to my corporate email. So Intune is going to give you the best of both worlds. The ability to manage a mobile device and what goes into managing those devices themselves and those applications, mobile applications. Now let's say you've got, these are great when we're talking about iOS and Android, but what about Windows? Excuse me. With Windows 10, we have something called Azure Active Directory Domain Join. So those end users who want to connect to corporate data from their Windows 10 device can join to our Active Directory domain, and then Intune can automatically manage those devices. So the same policies will apply. Excuse me one second, I'm going to cough again. Okay, don't want to cough into the mic. So again, Windows 10 is going to be able to be fully managed via Microsoft Intune, automatically via Azure Active Directory to manage that device itself. So we've got iOS devices managed, we've got Android devices managed, we've got Windows devices managed, all using Microsoft Intune. And this can be done for both, again, personal devices or corporate devices. All right, so we've got identity and we've got the devices managed. Now let's talk a little bit about data. So many folks are familiar with RMS, or Rights Management Services. We call it Azure RMS. We've moved that capability from Windows Server now into the cloud. We add a new addition. We have Azure Information Protection. So what does that do? It uses those RMS policies to provide data classification and labeling. So I am an end user and I've got a document or something. I'm connected to a directory, to my Azure Active Directory. But now with Azure Information Protection, I can start classifying that data. So does this Excel file contain a social security number? Well, if it does, we're going to classify this as PHI, protected health information, or sensitive information, or however you want to label that document. Once you label that document, you can then say, you know what, we're going to encrypt the document. If it is a Word or Excel or PowerPoint document, it could be a PDF document, images. It doesn't essentially matter. Once it's encrypted, I can lock it with that key. This key is stored in Azure RMS, and it's tied to my directory services. And I can encrypt the document and share it securely with an external user. And the encryption stays with that document. So I give it to another user. That user is verified against a directory. It could be Azure Active Directory. It could be our directory. And then they're able to then decrypt that document and read it. Let's say I see that document out in the wild. And as an end user, they get access to logging. And so does IT, of course. But as an end user, I can get notifications when someone tries to open up this document that I shared. I can actually see the location of where it's opened up as well. So if I send a document out to somebody, and then all of a sudden I see that document now being tried to be opened up in California, and then eventually maybe in Asia or Europe, I know this document somehow got out in the wild and people are trying to open it up. Now they're not going to be able to because they need credentials to open it up, but the fact that they're trying, I know this document's out in the wild, so now I can revoke entire access to the document. When it comes to revocation, I can also set a time bomb on it. So I can say, you know what, after 90 days, this document's never going to be opened, can be opened up again. So not only are we applying encryption to this, but we're applying tracking and revocation to these documents as well. And inside inside Word and Excel and PowerPoint, for example, I can scan that document and it can see if there is something that is protected, and we can send a tooltip to that user to say, you know what, there's a social security number in here. You might want to classify this document as sensitive. Or you can force it on the user. You can say, yep, we see a social security number on here. We're going to force this document as sensitive. This same tool of Azure Information Protection and Azure RMS applies in SharePoint, on-premise and in the cloud, Exchange, on-premise and in the cloud as well. So how does that work? So I'm going to be sending somebody externally an email. I am going to protect that email with rights management or Azure Information Protection. I'm classifying it as a confidential document. I'm emailing it through our system. It's going to encrypt the email and encrypt the document. When the end user gets it, they have to open it up and we verify who they are, and then they're able to access that document themselves. And again, that access is tracked and logged across the board. So this is how the solution works together. We've got identity, so we're verifying who the people are. We've got device management. We're verifying the devices that they're using meet our requirements, and then we're looking at the content. Does the content that they're using meet our requirements? Can we classify that content and then label it based on that classification? But the next step of this is, now that we've got this done, users are doing all these different things. They're behaving in a certain way. So how do we start looking at that behavior to determine, well, if someone starts doing things that are kind of strange, that deviate from this behavior, what can we do to track them? So that's the next tool comes in here. So AD on-premise is a treasure trove of information for anybody. Every time someone accesses a server, every time someone accesses a workstation, things are logged and tracked in AD. So now with a product called Advanced Threat Analytics, we can capture that network traffic through the ATA Gateway server and learn what's going on. We can learn the behavior. What application servers does this user use normally? Where do they log in from? Are they logging in from a PC at their desk? Are they logging in via VPN? But we can start learning this information about this user. And then if the user deviates from that behavior, IT can be alerted. Not only if they deviate from the behavior, IT can be alerted, but if they're doing something that is a known hacking technique or a known vulnerability, like, for example, pass the hash or pass the ticket. When you combine that together, you're able to get a good idea of what that user is doing, and if they're doing something strange that's beyond their normal behavior, we can alert IT to take action. So here's an example. You've got a user that normally logs in from 8 to 5 on a very specific machine. They're using maybe 3 or 4 applications, and so they're connected to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different servers or so, and that's what they do in a normal day. All of a sudden, that user is logging in at 2 in the morning from the VPN. Now, is that necessarily strange? A little odd, but not completely unusual. Now, that user who logged in at 2:30 in the morning from that VPN starts to run a pass-the-hash command against a server or workstation. Well, that's now, not only is it odd that they're logging in at 2:30 in the morning, they're doing something that they don't normally do that is a really known hacking technique. So since we've done that, we can now alert IT. So advanced threat analytics really looks at that behavior of your users and then is able to determine if they're doing something that's odd that is also a known hacking technique or something that a hacker might try to do. So this works on-premise. So Azure ATA is an on-premise solution. This does not really connect to Azure Active Directory. This is designed to protect your on-premise Active Directory domain. If you've got domain controllers sitting up in Azure or maybe in infrastructure services on Amazon Web Services, you can still use this product as well. There is an agent that can be installed on a collection server in those cloud services to then forward that traffic back to your on-premise ATA gateway and center. So it doesn't really matter where these domain controllers are sitting. You can still access all that information to learn the behavior of those users. The final piece of this now is with cloud applications, with cloud app security. So how do we look at the behavior of what's going on inside these cloud services? We can look at behavior on-premise, but what if people are doing something strange on Office 365, for example? A user is suddenly downloading 30 gigabytes worth of data from all of our SharePoint document libraries. That's a little odd behavior. Normally we don't do that. That's what cloud app security can do. So cloud app security looks and it does 2 different things. Number one is looking at those software SaaS cloud applications and determining the behavior of that user. And if they deviate from that behavior, again, let IT know. It can also look at the content that people are doing. So when I talked about Azure Information Protection and the content that it is able to, the labeling, we can look and see if that's happening in SharePoint Online, for example. Did somebody try to share a document out publicly that contains sensitive information, that has that sensitive label on it? We can deny that person from doing that. What are people doing inside OneDrive for Business? Are they sharing things out they shouldn't be doing? Are they doing behavior that they shouldn't be doing? That's what cloud app security can do in one respect. The other thing that it can do is look at cloud applications that people are using that you might not know about. So using the log collector or by connecting to your proxy or firewall, it can capture all that information and then provide you as IT with information about those cloud applications that exist on your network. As an example, I was working with one customer a couple of weeks ago, and they said, we flat out, we know we do not have any sanctioned cloud applications other than Office 365. I said, well, why don't you try installing a demo of cloud app security? We can walk you through how to get configured. You can really see what's happening in their environment. It turns out there's 150 unsanctioned cloud applications being used in their environment. The individual departments were going out without IT knowing and signing up for cloud services. One person in a cloud in an environment in one of the departments was going out and using the corporate credit card to sign up for various cloud app services that they might need. So cloud app security was able to catch that, and now they're able to apply policies and risk to those cloud services. So they see in the case of a hospital facility that cloud service does not have a BAA. They can then inform that end user, you know what, that cloud service you're using does not meet our security requirements. We're going to ask you to look for an alternative service, and if we sit down with you and we learn what you're trying to accomplish, maybe we can find one together. So instead of just blocking and saying, no, you can't do this, it's really helping you educate your users on what is a good policy, what is a good cloud service, and how can we work better together and partner together to find that right service that you can use. So again, just to kind of summarize cloud app security, 2 distinct capabilities. Number one is the control and the behavior monitoring of cloud applications. And the other thing is shadow IT detection. So being able to look at all on the collector, all the different cloud applications that people might be using on premise in your environment, and be able to let IT know these are the applications, and then we can remediate as we see fit. So When you combine this together, this is the overall solution of the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. Really focuses on those key pillars that I talked about: identity, devices, applications, and data. So we've got EMS is that comprehensive cloud solution that's going to really help you get a better handle on your security environment and really provide your end users with seamless access in a secure way to those different cloud services that you might have, as well as protect your on-premise Active Directory environment when it comes to identity. So let me turn this back over to the folks from Champions.
Thank you,
to finish
Craig.
up the presentation.
Thank you, Craig. That was great. If you would stay on, we're gonna continue, and I'll probably ask you a couple of questions just to put you on the spot because it's fun. So, everybody on, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. The next couple of slides are just a little bit more, we'll call it standard slides, but just to talk a little bit about Azure Active Directory, talk about Enterprise Mobility Suite and the different versions. As Craig mentioned, EMS is made up of 4 primary components. There'll be a test on this later. Azure Active Directory Premium, which enables self-service password reset, single sign-on, etc. Microsoft Intune, which is designed specifically for mobile device and mobile application management, as well as for managing desktops. Integrates nicely for those of you out there that might have System Center. It can integrate into it and make the overall System Center experience, frankly, easier to maintain. Azure Information, also known as Rights Management, enables you to apply security rights based on Active Directory groups, policies, locations within the environment, and it applies those rules and they stay with the file as that file is moved around within or outside of the organization. And then, of course, Advanced Threat Analytics. Most recently, Microsoft has delivered some updates. They've enhanced the capabilities of security, and we can talk about those on an off this call basis. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is just enhancing the capability of security. So, Craig, here's my first question for you. When I talk about Enterprise Mobility Suite, I'm looking at 4 reasonably significant applications for my environment. Azure Active Directory Premium, again, with single sign-on, self-service password reset, mobile device, mobile application management. How are you finding clients being successful implementing EMS? What types of strategies are they adopting? Are they going for all 4 at a time, or how are they doing that?
So we kind of see this in a couple different areas. If your focus is on Office 365 deployment, which in many cases, that's why we see people diving very quickly into what we have here in Enterprise Mobility and Security, they tend to focus on using Microsoft Intune and Azure Active Directory. That's the first 2 things they'll hit up. In order to support that type of deployment. In most cases, Azure Active Directory Premium is the first solution that we see get implemented because it's that identity foundation for everything else that they do. So from that perspective, Active Directory is that first piece to take care of. From there, we start looking at, okay, how do we configure multi-factor authentication to meet our needs? But before we do any of that, it's very, very important to go over your security policies. Because you're starting to implement cloud services and starting to do things differently, it's critical to review your internal security policies and procedures to ensure that everybody has agreed on what is going to be the appropriate level of access for our users and what types of security are we going to put in place to verify who they say they are and verify the devices that they're using are clean. So my suggestion is, as you're going through this deployment and determining what you're going to do, make sure those policies are in place and authorized by management to ensure it's going to be a smooth conversion from what you're using today to this solution.
Great, thank you, Craig. And just to go one step further, Champion, over the last 2 years, we've implemented probably 50 or 60 tenants of Enterprise Mobility Suite, both with and without Office 365. And where we've been successful, yeah, I can speak very well. where we've been most successful for organizations of all sizes is we've done a very concise statement of work that focuses on 1 or 2 or 3 applications from a single sign-on or a same sign-on perspective using Azure Active Directory Premium, and we get very specific on mobile device and mobile application management with Intune. The other tools, the rights management and the threat analytics, we implement threat analytics so it can begin discovering, but rights management is something that we take very slow because there are many, many, many decisions that need to be made, and complete understanding and a very, very clean Active Directory and security policies are required to really start beginning to take advantage of rights management. But we'll typically focus on the stuff that's existing either in Office 365, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc., and of course by extension into Exchange in the cloud, and or with organizations we'll take a very small subset or a specific group within AD and we'll do the work in there. So, and going forward, we have focused on making sure that clients understand the best things or the best challenges to go after before starting or before signing a contract. We're in the Q&A session. I did get a couple questions during the presentation. One of the questions was, is Active Directory Federation or ADFS required to utilize single sign-on password reset? The answer is no. You can utilize Azure Active Directory Premium in conjunction with ADFS, so if your organization already uses it for multiple directory authentication, it will work as it does today. But most organizations we're dealing with are typically replacing ADFS with Azure Active Directory Premium, frankly because it's simpler to support long term. But both work. We can use them together or we can use them separately. The second question, and this is my fault, the second question was, could you please identify a couple of acronyms? AAD and AADP were used by myself and by Craig, and we of course assumed things, and we all know what assuming means. But AAD, you probably know it by now, but it's Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is an instance that's provided through 365 if you go with 365, or if you're using Enterprise Mobility Suite, utilizing AD Connect, it will replicate your Active Directory up into Azure. So, Craig, second question for you. How much of a brain surgeon do I need to become on Azure to be able to consider using Enterprise Mobility Suite or Azure Active Directory Premium? Do I also have to become an infrastructure guru, for example, on Azure?
No, absolutely not. We the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, it sits on the Azure platform, but it's not really consuming those Azure infrastructure services or other services that are out there. So you really don't have to be an expert in Azure. What you have to be an expert at or learn at is what's part of the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, and we have plenty of training available on the Microsoft Virtual Academy, lots of different courses to help you get up to speed and help you implement the solution as well.
Thank you very much. All right, I haven't gotten any more questions online, so I just wanted to give a couple of quick shout-outs to things that you all could think about. Microsoft. Every company that's probably out there has a relationship of one level or another, whether you're a small, medium business, whether you're a global 50 company, you probably have some type of relationship with Microsoft today. If you don't, that's okay too. As an organization, Microsoft and partners like Champion, we together have gone through different training, etc., to be able to utilize something called Everywhere. Everywhere is a 1 to 4 day engagement. It can be longer, but it's a 1 to 4 day engagement where we can go from the basics of either Enterprise Mobility Suite, EMS, or we can even go basics, what is Azure, from an infrastructure, platform, and even software as a service, and we can talk about the different capabilities that are available. I put this cute little image that you're seeing on the screen up that shows high level the types of services that are being delivered through Azure. Long and short of it is anything I've said about Azure now It's been updated in the last 45 minutes. New services are being delivered like weekly, and a significant percentage of my life now is just spent making sure I understand what and how things are changing in Azure, because I have companies of all sizes looking to utilize Azure as a secondary business continuity disaster recovery infrastructure, tertiary data center. They're moving backups directly to Azure. Obviously, we're talking about identity and security. Organizations are using Azure as their DMZ. We're taking it off-prem and moving it out to Azure. I mean, the capabilities and the abilities are pretty much unlimited, and you can do application development for your Xbox, so that's important. With that, the final slide. I hope I haven't bored. I hope I haven't bored anybody. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's just some additional, if you need any additional information, feel free to check us out at MessageOpsMobility.com or ChampionSG.com. Email contacts are there. Everyone on the call will receive, or I'm sorry, everybody who signed up for the presentation will receive a link, be able to download the presentation. And finally, Stacy Mancinelli, who heads up our marketing division, will be having a drawing for an Xbox One, and you will be notified within the next day or two if you've won. So with that being said, I'm looking, I see two other questions. Do you have to be currently using ADFS services to move to this solution? The answer to that question, Matt, is no. You do not have to be using ADFS to utilize Azure Active Directory or Enterprise Mobility Suite. There's a typo on the resources slide. Sorry. Really? My fault. Sorry. So you guys, thank you for pointing out my error. I appreciate it. So with that, Frank, the man who pointed out my error, I will wish everybody a great afternoon, and thank you for giving us the time. Have a great day.